I'll show you this as kind of a success story for what the therapy can do. And then all these results are still in clinical trials. He's got like 8 or 10 patients that have responded positively. He found kind of the dream patient, someone that responded almost in the first application, and it literally changed his life. So it's super, super inspiring. So what are your thoughts? Yeah. First session, yeah. To hear from his wife. I mean, just simple things like sitting in the chair. That's kind of one part of the project I wasn't really prepared for, is to try to be the emotional side of human suffering. So our other local patient, Ed, is in the hospital right now. He fell on his head. He has really stiff joints, has trouble walking. But like he walks anyway. He lives alone, which is super big challenge for us. He spent hours with our students. They're actually trying to design some custom books for him so that he can put the gloves on by himself. So I have some notes about what is Parkinson's, how do these vibrations really work, and then how do we kind of scaffold the project where kids can get involved in electronics design, programming, and learn something about how the brain works. Just kind of a little basic vocabulary for them. So I think when we first came to this class, not a single kid identified Parkinson's as something that they had heard of in their families. Shortly, and all of a sudden, once those words were there, then they realized that how pervasive it was, and also how helpless a lot of folks are. So the drugs wear off and have bad side effects. And the deep brain stimulation is not just surgery, they're actually installing an electrode deep into the center of the brain, as you can see, and you're kind of resetting the entire clock. So it's spooky for a lot of folks. Our Santa Fe patient is being scheduled to have this done. And the other people we're dealing with is an elderly Asian woman in California, and she has very little faith in Western medicine. And the last thing, so I mentioned in our first interview together on Zoom, I mentioned this deep brain stimulation. And her husband said, after doctor used that word again, I'm in trouble. It was clear that they're really stigma, so it's all these things are another thing for kids to learn about, right? It's so easy to kind of complain about the healthcare system. It's another thing to understand it and have a lens to meet people where they're at, understand their symptoms. And even, because eventually we need to, and we're building this now, kind of a client website where people can tell us something about their symptoms, how long they've had it. It's still early days, we don't really know kind of the optimal settings for some of the parameters I'm going to show you. We also don't really know the optimal patient. It seems to be that the ones with kind of younger, earlier onset is more amenable to this type of non-invasive treatment, or to help somebody who's had it for 30 or 40 years of age. It might just be it does feel good, it does feel good to interact with young people, but we have basically 3 clients so far. Our third client, like Brandon, he also broke his hip. He's also an MIT scientist who really wanted to also help us debug some of these things with the lab versus mechanisms. So let's just take a quick peek through these notes, just to kind of get us started on what is Parkinson's. So probably the key stat in the beginning is the second most common neurodegenerative disease after Alzheimer's. Everybody's heard of Alzheimer's. But of course, number 2 is typically like lacking in understanding. And so it is number 2. It's 1.2 million people in the States, 10 million around the world. And it's like Alzheimer's. There is a Manhattan Project of biochemists going after kind of the root causes of this. And what we're treating here, we are not biochemists, we're not treating the root causes. The root cause is that something occurs either in the environment or in your genes. So even the causes of Parkinson's is still murky. But there seem to be environmental factors, there could be also genetic factors, and there just seem to be kind of some amorphous, like bad luck factors that we don't understand. Those lead to the death of certain cells that are deep in the brain. So if we kind of focus in on the center, there's something called the substantia nigra, which is at the top of the brainstem. In Parkinson's disease patients, there are neurons in here that actually produce dopamine. And dopamine is amazing. We know it as a feel-good, as a reward center, but it's also needed to modulate activity of cells. 80% of our neurons are excitatory, 20% of them are inhibitory. There's this amazing kind of balance that needs between excitation and inhibition for things to work. And these are modulated by neurotransmitters like dopamine. So they show this dopamine pathway out of the substantia nigra into the striatum. And that's the place where motor patterns are really planned. Pretty much anything that's kind of that deep in the brain means they're keeping it away from conscious control. So something like your heartbeat, breathing, our fundamental motion plans should kind of be set in a way that we don't really even think of. As you think about going downstairs, we typically screw up, right? Because we're thinking too hard. So that's the real center of kind of motor abilities. And so when we lose dopamine in those pathways, we lose the ability to have really full control over motors. So we get symptoms like tremor, we get symptoms like freezing of gait or rigid joints. Those are the two kind of most obvious symptoms. That's for sure you saw those two symptoms. And so there's the death of cells. That then causes something to go wrong in motor planning, and then that leads to these bad rhythms. They get entrained in motor cortex. That's the next place I want to go. Motor cortex. Before that, though, so since things are misfiring away deep in the brain stimulation puts an electrode all the way from the top, all the way down into the center, a permanent electrode that stays there. And with maybe a little patch under the skin, which has kind of like a pacemaker, that says that this thing should be resetting that whole part of the brain, that big shock, literally just like you're putting a cattle prod in the center of the brain. And the doctor has some ability to kind of fine-tune how often those shocks are happening. Sometimes they give control over to the individual, to self-deliver shocks. It's still very much early days, but these are being done by probably by the thousands. These are being implanted every day for people for which the drugs have totally worn off. And so deep in the brain is where the problem sits, right? And so most of the money for Parkinson's disease is trying to address how to, ideally, since the brain's not really, you know, we learn in biology most cells reproduce, and the brain is not the case. Only one or two foundries, one of them's in your nose, in fact. We keep on making new olfactory cells because we shed those cells from the interior of our nose. There's one other place in the hippocampus that makes new cells. There are no new building cells coming out of that. And so there's this Manhattan Project trying to grow cells that will create dopamine, that we can kind of inject into the right area and then pray that they integrate it with their neighbors. So that's not happening. Even though billions of dollars. Individually, Michael J. Fox, he's maybe one of the most obvious. I don't know if he has EPS or not. That's a good question. He did have early Alzheimer's, 29. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's. His foundation has raised $2 billion. So it's really inspiring to see the level of engagement that we can going after kind of fundamental things. So that said, we're addressing the symptoms, kind of quality of life issues. We're not yet medical scientists, and we haven't gone there yet. And so, but still on this first page, I want to get get to the key, what's going on. And I think also for students, it's really beautiful to see. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that homunculus before, if you take some anatomy class. So let's first look at the picture in the center, right? In the center, we see that there's just these parallel bands across our head of a sensory cortex and a motor cortex. And basically, I think you guys know the cortices on my left side are sensing and controlling my right side, and the cortices on my right side are sensing and controlling what's going on the left side. And so, how does the brain kind of distribute real estate to the senses? And so, if we take a look at the somatosensory cortex, this is where senses are coming in. And so, I think you guys can imagine, right, that we have way more sensory neurons on our tongue than we do even on our head or our neck. Right? Can you see as you kind of move up that band? Look at the size of the cortical area devoted to the hand. So the hand has lots and lots of sensory neurons. Lots and lots. So then for scientists, this is a place, then a good place to interact with the brain, because there's lots of stuff happening there. So we want to send patterns into the brain, the hand is like this. Of course, we can also send patterns into the eyes, makes people have seizures. We could send patterns into the ear, which causes headaches. So the hand is a really cool place. It has all those neurons. And our gums are quite sensitive. You know, our thumb is gigantic. It has the piece of real estate it has devoted to the brain. And then correspondingly, kind of the size of the patched brain, which is sensitive to the hand, also has a similar patch in the parallel cortex, or motor cortex, a parallel place where, you know, there are neurons devoted to exercising all those muscles in the hand. So I think it's really important for kids to see how the body is mapped by the brain. The brain is mapped by the body, both in senses and in motor and action. One of the key themes in MESA for me is physical computing. Physical computing means sense, decide, act. And so with Arduinos, you know, we connect a distance sensor to an Arduino, which is the actor, or the decider. The actor then is an actuator, like a motor that opens or that moves, as opposed to in turn for what it senses. So to sense, decide, and act. So that's really what's happening in the brain. So the purple stuff is sensing what's happening in the world, and the decider is then making a decision whether to move a certain limb or not. Then they send that to the motor cortex. And so it's in this motor cortex, around hands and around joints, that the lack of dopamine way in the center of the brain has led to really bad vibrations, the opposite of today's discussion, bad vibrations in the brain. So bad rhythms get set up, and that tremor, right, is this kind of 5 or 6 hertz, you know, 5 or 6 motions per second of uncontrollable motion. That coupled with the inability to move those joints. So the question is, how do we scramble those bad rhythms? The bad rhythms are trained by a lack of dopamine. It's a pretty complicated pathway between the center of the brain and motor cortex. It goes through the thalamus, the main relay station in the brain. So there's lots more neuroanatomy to get in there, but the culprit is lack of dopamine. It manifests itself in bad rhythms that get set up in the motor cortex. And so the belief, even going back to that neurologist in France in the 1800s, noticed that patients coming in by train had fewer symptoms than patients that were walking to the office. So there's something about random shaking that seemed to diminish the symptoms. And so if we move to the next page, this is a figure from Tass's paper. So you met Tass in the video. He is the principal investigator. It's his laboratory, which is making these gloves and doing this research. And what you see is the brain on the left is the brain before treatment with the glove. And what we're seeing, those colors correspond
correspond to the kind of fraction of the brain which is in sync at a bad frequency. So red is bad, green and blue are good. Right? So there's a lot of that motor sensory cortex which is vibrating at a bad frequency. And after 3 months of treatment on the same brain, same person, we see the picture on the right. So there's no red and orange. So those bad frequencies seem to have been kind of scrambled by 3 or 4 months of treatment. So that's a basic science picture. Of course, the patient doesn't see this, right? The patient only knows whether they've got symptoms or not, right? So again, there are now 3 kind of standard markers or standard tests that patients with Parkinson's are given to test kind of their rigidity and their tremor. And the same patient saw reduction in all 3 markers of Parkinson's. And of course, they felt the difference because they weren't shaking. Their tremors weren't as rigid. This was on about 6 patients, corresponding with the study, and the video was from less than 18 months ago, and the study is from less than 2 years ago. So it's like ongoing. Kids are also, in some sense, at the cutting edge, and our patients, almost all of our patients know about these studies. Our patient in California, she signed up for these clinical studies, and she was denied treatment. There's a lot of focusing from something in your past, made her less than an ideal patient. And of course, they just want ideal patients. And our job living here in an under-resourced community, right, is especially to help those people that don't even have access to health insurance, let alone access to a lawyer that can fill out forms. So that's the big picture on kind of how things work. Delivering small vibrations to the fingertips 4 hours a day for 3 months can reduce the bad vibrations that got set up in the brain by lack of dopamine. Those I'm trying to give you the big pieces. So now the question is, now that we've got these tech-savvy high school and college students, right, and courageous teachers looking to solve a problem that's been brought to us from the community, how can we hack the glove? That's the question. I mean hacking in this sense, right? I think in the basic sense of the word, right? We're not trying to squeeze in on his business, but we are interested in how to manufacture these things so that they're reliable, so we can put them in the mail and have them work for people. So, have you guys worked with Arduinos before? So there's an Arduino on the left with not a very complicated wiring diagram, I hope. Those black things are vibrating motors, not so different from what you have in your cell phones. So there's a little vibrating motors. And then there are kind of 4 wires coming out of the Arduino, the decider. Those 4 wires are coming out and switching those motors on and off by toggling the base of a transistor. So those things with ends on them are transistors. Again, it's a teaching opportunity for us. Just to play with kids and ask them, what was the greatest invention of the 20th century? I've never heard any of them say transistor. I happen to think it's a transistor. It's your computer almost not has many transistors as your brain has switches. The cell phone is close to a laptop. So we're swimming in the world created by the transistor. But so few kids have actually held a transistor in their hand. Because these days, the reason you kind of believe transistors in here is because they're integrated under a piece of sand and glass. That's a very high level explanation for them to hold a transistor in their hand and see this one on the horizon for you too from Bell Labs. It took 30 years to integrate this into circuits, but now those circuits have created the digital age. So again, these kind of teaching moments about a key piece of technology. This is not just ridiculous switch. It's needed to move the decision from the brain into a control of what happens in the motor. So now the question is, what program should we put in the Arduino to generate the patterns of fingertips? So that's now this is another picture from the technical paper of class, right? So even getting our high school kids and college kids to read neurophysiology paper, and again, kids read it like we do. We read it, we look at the pictures and we look at the captions, and we try to connect the dots. And if we need help, we can go deeper. And so let's take a look at that pattern and see if we can kind of understand what's happening. There's a Roman numeral for each finger. So do you guys just kind of want to move across on the top row? So finger 1 is quiet during kind of epoch, and a little bit, and then all of a sudden in the 4th epoch, that initial slice, there's a zzz delivered at finger 1. And then right away another zzz delivered. Zzz is one of these kind of red patterns I'm looking at. And then I move across and it's quite quiet, but within kind of a frame, I'll call it. You know, in the first frame, I see 3, 2, 4, 1 is the pattern. You guys see that? 3, 2, 4, 1. Can you tell me, so somebody else read off to me, what's the pattern in the next frame?
1, 2, 4.
Excellent. And then
2, 4.
Cool. And then all off, and then all off, and then a repeat. So there's kind of like 3 patterns get delivered, and then 2 pauses, 3 patterns, 2 pauses, 3 patterns, 2 pauses. And so this was discovered by trial and error and by some modeling of how the brain works by Peter Toss and his group at Stanford. And so that's the pattern that we're trying to create. So I wonder, in some sense, I love teaching kids how to code this, and we had really fun exercises in Miss Janice and Miss Lou's class. So I wonder if we might kind of stand up and do this ourselves. So this is the entire program for the glove. The entire program.
Can I ask you, I'm not a coder, so I'm curious about the shuffling part. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that's, it does.
In my mind, like
good,
maybe I'm
good.
looking at like musical, in like I'm thinking like a pause.
Yeah, so
But then I don't understand shuffle.
Gotcha. So let's look at that first epoch again. Can you guys read off to me the order in which you guys were turned on?
3, 2, 1, 4.
Right. Yeah. So what the shuffle allows us to do is now in the next bit of time to completely scramble what happened in the first one. Right. So I turn 3, 2, 4, 1 into 1, 2, 4, 3. And then we turn that into 2, 4, 3, 1.
So in our shuffling, we're creating that sequence that we kind of see right here.
And maybe my mind is going to like, where does that go? Like, and I guess I'm stuck in that. I'm just vibrating through speakers.
Yeah.
But is it like the same, like finger 1 or 0?
Yes.
I'm just gonna keep going. I'll figure it out.
No. You're right. So meaning number 1.
Yeah.
So the first time you're not turning it on, you wait until everyone was done before it turns on.
Yeah. Okay.
And then again, now it turns on before everyone else.
I see. Okay.
So it actually like
So it's like instead of 0, 0, 0, 1. I'm thinking
on,
binary.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. Off, on.
On. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You're in the right track.
Yes, I think it helps to do it with the real body, but also helps to see it, here, right? So this is the circuit we're building is quite small, right? So try to stretch it out on this for us. So it's you can see these guys dancing, and they're dancing in a random pattern. So I feel something coming across. Like he said, he feels these waves coming across. So I'll ask you guys to you can do it right now. If you want to reach in, you're just gonna. You maybe even feel the table. But yeah, can you guys come over? I don't want to.
That's always bring the soldering iron in case things fall apart. And
A true vibration shift.
is it soothing or is it distracting?
It's not distracting at all. It's pretty good.
The initial.
The initial. Initial healing.
Yeah.
So the patient in that study had the glove on, or old glove on for 3 hours receiving.
Yeah, to tell the truth, you can kind of spread it out. It's 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. Yeah, so it's a little bit less invasive.
After a while, you kind of forget.
It's not distracting at all.
Yeah, so that's a fundamental kind of misunderstanding here. So since tremors are happening in the hand, that this is actually fixing the hand. Right? It's not. It's the fact that you have so many neurons sensing the hand, and then it's going to help unscramble. It's going to scramble the bad rhythms. Yes. Yeah, another way it's kind of kids know about sound canceling headphones. That's what it's doing. Yeah, so it's not fixing your hand, it's fixing your brain. Nothing wrong with your brain. So you see what's happening there? And I guess as long as I have the box. So currently all this stuff is happening now in this box, right? And this box was designed by our high school college students. The internals, the wiring together with 3D printing. It says made and designed by Viola on the side. They've got a Steady Hands logo. Tulip is the international symbol for the Parkinson's Foundation. And they have the tulip coming out of a basket, which happens to be Hydro from Mexico. And it's a joint between my college and MC and the high school colleges. So, this goes off and you kind of see everything that's inside. And then the battery sits on top of that. And this is in fact, it only runs for like 3 hours. So but that's just the USB-C charger. So we can skip the code and leave that. But you guys really you enacted out the code, which is shuffling numbers around in a list or an array. So the next pictures then show you, if you're looking at the code right inside the box, right? And then largely just as there's been a gigantic evolution of the design principles around the shape of the circuit and how to get as much as possible. So I showed you this big Arduino that maybe some of you have seen in Tinkercad in the real world. This is about 1/10 of that size. And so it's a whole lot easier to miniaturize this. There's a power switch on the outside to turn this thing on and off. I don't have that in the demo box, but you see it there. Yeah. And then a ton of design principles went into designing and printing these finger kind of connectors. And a lot has happened there. I tried to zoom in on one there. It looks like an old school radio from the 30s or something, But that black thing is the vibrating motor, and that thing needs to be wired up to the brain. So this is largely an innovation of Ms. Jennison, their ability to sew and to lead sewing teams. We're working now on how to. This is the most time-consuming aspect of the entire business. So we're trying to. So it's pretty ingenious. Okay, so Joey, you and I have different sized fingers than ladies. So there's the ability to open up that elastic before kind of going in. So this is how it gets worn. This is my wife modeling here. She was one of our earlier designers of a canvas glove that we had. So there's my wife with a glove that we just sent to Glenn. They just tried it last night. I didn't open it this morning. So it just sent this pair of gloves off, and you see the size of the box is quite small, and it kind of sits here on the wrist side. So we're still kind of contemplating on how to, we now have a circular design for this, with a bubble enclosure within the box. It's, to tell the truth, the battery is bigger than the computer, and also kind of bizarre thing. And amazing thing, you know, how for me said these days, the batteries are expensive. So I tell kids, I mean, in China, all STEM work is on battery chemistry, starting with nuclear. So we are way behind. I'm not trying to make us competitive, but just a step back. This thing is bigger and more expensive than the computer. All this technology was invented in the States. And it's not just small batteries here, it's also batteries on the power grid that can help us get away from burning fossil fuels. So many touch points with I'm into their project-based learning, which means, you know, I'm going to come in and make, you know, kids uncomfortable about electronics or about programming. It's a need to know, uncomfortable in the good sense, right? To work 3 or 4 years on a PhD for this, you know, we're going to lose 90% of the kids. So invest them in a hard project. We have a couple of leaders, Jeremy and Chelsea, in high school, and my students in UDEC. In fact, they're just courageous about kind of like learning things on the fly and failing and eventually doing something that works. So but it does give us that opportunity to kind of flesh out, well, now that you've learned that, you understand how the batteries work in the first place. What this processor, unlike the big fat one here, that also has Wi-Fi. So this semester we're building that, where our patient can choose on the menu what do they want to do. If they want to put this in charge mode, they want to put it in run mode, also going to add an accelerometer to this. They want to put it in test mode, where we can literally measure their own tremor. So far they've not been able to quantify that without going to the doctor themselves. So like home blood pressure, we can give them an accelerometer on this thing which measures those accelerometers now on microwaves. Maybe you guys have seen them in classes. So they're everywhere, but I often see them as just kind of gimmicky things. So many places to go.
Does this simulate the tremor? Is that what
it fixes the tremor? So
I'm just curious on that.
That's the next step.
I just
does this. It makes those patterns. So Toss and his group, there's like 15 people on that technical paper. Toss in his laboratory discovered those patterns as the most efficacious for reducing symptoms, freezing of gait, rigidity. So it is counterintuitive that we stop the shaking of fingers by shaking fingers. You know what I mean? It's a little meta.
If you think of all of the products that are out there, so for those with Parkinson's, you know, how it works to stabilize through vibration, you know, even the utensils.
Yeah.
You know, it's, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense.
No, it makes sense when you said like the noise cancellation. It's like, oh yeah, that.
What's strange about that is it's not just happening on the hand, it happens by actually things going up here, rechanging the brain so the brain does not send bad patterns back to the brain. So I love it. It makes it hard to draw. So all we're doing is creating those stimulus patterns, right? And this thing costs $20, not including the labor. Although we have foundation grants, and I just paid these ladies a little bit out of the foundation grants for their hard work. And our students are now, between Governor's STEM Challenge and this work, they're probably having $1,500 a piece of labor. And they're super proud of their work. And their hands are all over the project. I mean, they're involved in these. So we really botched the early ways of kind of getting the finger stably attached. You know, these wires are the smallest gauge wires I've ever seen. 32 gauge. It's super hard to work with. It takes real patience and discipline and focus by students to work with those. And to create these little tombstone radios, you know, with slits on the side so that the elastic can fit right through, to sew on all that Velcro, and to get the wires long enough to feed into the screw terminals on the box. You can find it's going to be this small enough to actually attach those things. The pads on the back of this computer for connecting the battery are even small motors. So there's a lots of places for them to stumble or to check out and just continue to innovate with the idea, that someone's going to be wearing it for 2 hours. And it's got to be complicated. And it's got to be, hold up. Yes.
Patient shouldn't be sobbing.
Yeah.
We don't send them a sign.
No.
Although some of our, these early patients, they want to be in on almost every part of the decision, which is fantastic. So this picture here is the state of the art, right? I'm not going to send you guys home with love, and I'd be interested in recruiting other teams into this project, but also it's just meant to be kind of a demonstration project of like what can be done with Mesa hardware. Right? And so this is something programmed in your IDE, which we teach our ninth graders in Mesa. The black things are the transistors. The ceramic things are resistors. There's a switch. There's a terminal block.
Before we actually do anything with additional ones, we have the use a way of showing this. We connected LED instead of models. So kids can maybe see the fire. Instead of visualizing first. Yeah, when they bring it. So we can mix. Ooh, this one's right here.
Yes, it's making a random light show. It was the same type of program.
And the students can solder the part and check. So they create their own positions. Is my soldering good enough?
Yeah.
Before I give it to the next person.
Yeah, so they're learning manufacturing, which is something that's not even taught well in colleges. Because they now need, it's not enough to say, I did my part, and it's now back in the cell phone. That doesn't happen. We have a workshop where typically we work 4 or 5 hours at a stretch with each other. There's like a design table, printing. There's a sewing table, there's manufacturing, there's the soldering table, constructing the circuit. But in a testing table, we have to really see that all things work together, not just individually. And the two most advanced high school students just graduated in May. They're now freshmen in UNM in computer engineering, and they're the ones pushing the next page. So I learned from Jeremy how to, because it's the soldering required in the bottom of this box is also about 10 hours of work, and largely because of troubleshooting. Things don't work, you can go back and solder and replace it. By then, you may be kind of destroyed the thing you're working on. So it's really challenging. And so, can we design a printed circuit board? And then just kind of do that design once, and Jeremy taught me how to use this tool. So it's a free printed circuit board tool. So we lay out a schematic and teaching kids how to use schematics. That's a CTE skill.
Because they're pushing this things. Because he was really skilled.
He was. He's teaching my college students this. He taught it in effect, which is a whole other thing. When I said that we're working for 4 hours at a time, and there's 2 college students and 2 high school students at the same table, learning soldering, and also thinking about printed circuit boards, and thinking about improving on what the old man has us doing, because they have got better ideas.
Or sitting me during lunch. This is what we got to do.
So the give and take between this that makes it bloody magic, isn't it? You guys understand it, but seeing it happen, and also giving a space for this to happen. So it's not going to happen in a 30-minute classroom. Kids come in to give presentations, the mentors sit down, and don't really know how to interact. But at the table, so Yvette and Anita, these 2 graduates, college graduates, working with kids that are about to be high school graduates, they have like a quantitative effect on Jeremy and Angel's confidence in coming to UNM's engineering students on high school. It's a very rare thing.
Before that day, we were like, we were just listeners. So we didn't push it. And also, but by other members of the group also were like not skilled at first, but then like that teacher said, how do you do that? Like, can you teach me how to do that? So like, Chelsea was like we started with the ironing board. Ironing, yeah, just ironing the I don't know anything. Now she's doing doing all this other.
Yeah, yes. I would say Chelsea is the best. Yeah. Jeremy, the leader, is always thinking about the next thing.
The now.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. She's a senior now. She's in my dual credit engineering class.
And that's how they get into it, they get more comfortable.
Yes.
Oh, okay, Dr. Steve. Ah, okay. Steve, Steve.
We met him, we know him, like something like that, what's something that says.
So this thing's in the mail right now, and I should have it in 2 weeks. So this is what the printed circuit board will look like in three dimensions. And
Now,
then,
Where did you
One has
get
to
this
work.
printed circuit board?
so there, I think I shared with you the site, right? It's Easy EDA. It's a Chinese site. Yeah, it's at the bottom. Sorry, I don't have page numbers on here. So it's just below the club, Easy EDA. That's where you design it. It's totally free. So
You designed it.
you design it, and then this board, as it is like this, would be about 50 cents.
Did you not
If
have
you wanted to come with the parts, it comes up to like $10 fully assembled. He has not. No, this is me. I redid his work. He's at college now, which is, I'm so happy for him. But yeah, so we will put a stencil of our logo on the board. I'll find an answer to that. Yes. But this is just a prototype. It's in the mail. I'm not even sure this is going to completely work. This is a new phase.
So these are already 24s. So coming, right?
Is it 20? I think it's 5. Yeah, because I'm not exactly sure they got all the parts in the correct requirements, and they're 5. But they're $10 a piece to assemble. They can be cheaper once you order more. And then we come into the classroom, and all the kids need them is this $4 computer, which they lay over the pins, and they come in with someone else's constructed finger pad with the wires. They put them in the box. And then they start to realize, well, let's insert the box with a bubble top and a small battery. I've got some coin batteries coming as well, which may do the job.
Kids have more amazing ideas.
Yeah.
So you're ordered them in assembled?
Yes, I ordered them assembled so that they should look like that picture. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this would be way easier to solder than this thing.
It would be easier to solder, it would, but it's still soldering.
Yeah.
So if you just, so there's still a little bit of solder to do. So once you put the brain on top of those pins, you kind of see the sockets for this. So there's still a little bit of work.
And you said this was 20 plus the time of the labor.
Yeah. So this will actually
They're coming at expertise.
yeah. And the hours that these two ladies and my wife have spent troubleshooting and redesigning. It was pretty exciting having this workshop at the college. There'll be a piece on Channel 13 this week. They have a series on New Mexico frontiers. They came and filmed us. And our patient was there. We got to meet Ed and talk with him. They interviewed Chelsea and Angel and his channels. These guys have pretty high production values. Have you watched his New Mexico frontiers, Chad?
Shooting shows and
Hopefully we'll get on the Mesa list. So there's lots of next steps that we could talk about, but I probably chewed up more than my time.